Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.
So Constantinople is a complete software and operational platform for banks. And we're really deliberate in how we describe the business. But we think of it's the first of its kind in the world in that it is a complete infrastructure platform, but it's also a complete operational platform for banks. And so maybe we'll unpack that a little bit. So the infrastructure layer of our platform ranges from front-end customer experience, so we run mobile apps and web apps. It's through to the infrastructure that's needed to support banking products like transaction accounts, payments, cards and lending products, right down through to the underlying ledger and the data lakes that we need to support a bank from a traditional technology perspective. We manage that on behalf of our client banks, and there have been other companies historically and today who package all of those infrastructure components up for a bank as a fully managed service. I think what really differentiates us though is that we're looking to expand the remit of the software to discharge and provide a lot of the operational services that a bank needs in market. So we also perform all of a bank's onboarding, KYC, AML responsibilities as an agent of our banks. We manage their fraud program, we manage payment operations, lending operations, we manage customer servicing and call centers. We manage all of the compliance obligations and the risk settings on behalf of our client banks. And we use software to do most of that. And so really what our business is in total is a complete operating or operational platform for banks, which allows our client banks to then focus on the things that really matter to their customers and the business of being a bank. And we sometimes say, when you think about a lot of what a bank does today, a lot of those services are either commoditized or completely undifferentiated from a customer's perspective. And so, no customer says, I've just switched to Bank A because I love the way my money sits in that transaction account. And people don't say, I switched to Bank B because I love the way they submit their reg files to the regulator. Now, these are mission critical services. You've got to get them right. You're operating inside the regulatory perimeter and there's no room for error. But these are undifferentiated services. For Constantinople, we're looking to do all of the operational heavy lifting on behalf of banks and allow our banking clients to get back into the business of being a bank. Yeah, there's no doubt that it's a very, very complex problem to solve. So my co-founder Dianne Challenor, the advantage that we have is that we've worked in large institutions and we've worked in financial services for a long time. So we understand what it's like to operate inside that regulatory perimeter. And I think that's different from a lot of early stage founders. You graduate from Stanford or MIT, you want to set up a fintech. It's very hard to immediately operate inside that regulatory perimeter because the expectations that are placed on you are so great. And the traditional method of building for an early stage company is to really test and learn. Tend to see in fintech is lots of companies that are playing on the edge of the regulatory perimeter. They're playing just outside, providing services that banks can consume, but are really not looking to discharge regulatory obligations on behalf of banks. I think because we had that experience, I think it makes the scale of what we're trying to achieve and the level of difficulty is extreme. But if we can do it, I think you establish a competitive moat around yourself because there are not too many others who are able to tackle the problem that we're looking to solve. I've spent most of our careers in global markets. So I spent 17 years in the US, in New York and Silicon Valley, and Di spent I think 14 years in Hong Kong and Asia. We came back to Australia in 2017, but both of us have a global mindset. We've worked in large global institutions. We understand how banks work, not just here in Australia, but all around the world. And what we realise is that all banks are fundamentally the same. They run very complex legacy infrastructure, and they also have very complex operations, which are predominantly today manual. It's something that always surprised me is if you look at most banks around the world, this is true for large banks and small banks, they like to think of themselves, and they are to some degree, it's sort of digital first companies with a big focus on technology. But in most banks, they spend somewhere around 10 to 15% of their costs on technology. It's often, they spend about 60 to 70% of their costs on people. And those people are doing a whole set of operational activities. That's how a bank runs itself. It operationalizes itself using people. And people do product management, people do payments operations or lending operations or credit assessment, risk management, obviously customer servicing, and all of your compliance obligations are mostly discharged through manual processes. I think if you looked at any other industry that has the same level of regulatory scrutiny, you can think of airlines, for example. Any major airline in the world knows where every bolt is in the company. They have incredible software to tell them what's going on inside their company and inside their operations at any point in time in order to manage the risk. But that's not necessarily true in banks today. You see lots of fintechs selling into banks, but they're selling into that 10% of the cost structure that we'd mentioned before. Really, one of the big problems that exists in banks is how do you automate the 60 to 70% of the cost structure that's managed through people, and how do you thereby give bank executives the confidence that their bank is being run and meeting all compliance obligations at any point in time. I mean, banks have done a really good job on front-end customer experience. People like to knock the banks, but you look at the four major banks here in Australia, and their front-end customer experience is outstanding. It's as good as, or if not better than anywhere else in the world. Where banks have struggled is, as we said before, around a lot of those operational processes, because it's really hard to automate those given the complexity of their existing technology environments. And so, it's not, if a bank could wave a wand and spend a lot of money to solve a lot of that operational complexity, they would have done that. But it's not as simple as just spending a lot of money. There's incredible complexity in their back-end environments. And so that's why we came to the conclusion that we needed to bring all of this together into one native package, one native platform that works together holistically. The operational software that we've built that automates a lot of the operational processes that exist inside banks today, a lot of the automated controls that we use in order to make sure that the compliance obligations are discharged, that works natively on our infrastructure. And so, if we were to write code to automate operational processes for banks, the minute that were to be consumed back into a bank's legacy environment is the minute that you lose much of the efficacy of that. Then you're into this significant effort to customize the software for the particular environment in which it's working. And so you lose much of the value. And so, really our platform has all of that operational software working natively on top of the infrastructure. So you're right that in the early stages it was Dianne and me in a WeWork office. We had we put together a PowerPoint presentation on our laptops, which we then took to Square Peg and Airtree. I mean, in those early stages, just trying to convince people around where the future of financial services and banking should go. There's a natural logic. To this. I remember Paul Bassett, who invested in us and sits on our board, said to us that when he was doing diligence on the opportunity, he said he'd spoken to people from banks around the world, and the feedback was there's a certain logic to what we were proposing, and that they thought that in 10 years' time there would be very, very big companies around the world who would do a version of what we were proposing. So the question that they posed to him is, are these the guys you want to back? Yeah. It's a great idea. I think the industry evolves in that direction. Yeah. There's a certain inevitability around that, but are these the guys you want to back? So a lot of our effort in the early stages was convincing people that we had the expertise to be able to pull off what is a really complex business model. You're exactly right. I mean, you can't build a great company by yourself. Yeah. And so it's all about the people that you want to partner with. And that's absolutely true of our investors. So you mentioned at the outset we raised from Square Peg, Airtree, and Great Southern Bank. I always say to them, we made 3 great decisions in the earliest weeks of the company, and they've been the best decisions we've made so far. And that was who we decided to partner with on the investor side. And all 3, I mean, just to talk about the 2 venture funds, Square Peg and Airtree have been absolutely amazing. I just can't speak highly enough of both of those firms. And so Paul Bassett at Square Peg, what more can you say about Paul? Sometimes you're grateful that you've got Paul's number in your mobile phone, and that when you see the phone ring and it's Paul Bassett, you sort of think, wow. He's been amazing, but as has the entire Square Peg team. Similarly at Airtree, our partner there, James Cameron, has been fantastic for us. Craig really backed us, so we're just so lucky to have been backed by those 2 funds. And then our relationship with Great Southern Bank has been incredible as well. I think they can't believe the speed at which we've built. We've got a really good partnership with them. When you're building a bank, it's not like this. It's not a linear path to perfection. So we have our good days and our bad days, and we get things wrong. There's no. We talked before about how when you're operating inside the regulatory perimeter, there's no room for error. I think that's true at a macro level, but of course, day to day, it's just impossible to avoid error. The thing that we do best culturally is that we understand that an early stage company is a learning engine. Yeah. And so you cannot bring preconceived ideas about. Obviously, people talk a lot about the product and needing to get market fit. But even just in terms of how you run the company, how you structure yourself, how you try to solve problems, I don't think we did bring ideas with us about how we should do it, and we got a lot of things wrong in the early stages. I think what we've done well is we're very decisive. We fix problems very, very quickly. Once we got the money, and we'd established a relationship with Great Southern Bank, we had to build out a team. We were fortunate that we knew a handful of engineers who had all been friends at Sydney University. They'd all studied mechatronics together at Sydney Uni, and so we were able to bring in an initial group of sort of 15 or 20 engineers who had all been friends at Sydney Uni, and so they'd come from different companies, from Atlassian and Canva and Accenture and others. But they came back together because they wanted to work together. And I think if you took the 48 engineers that we have today, I think 35 of them were all studying mechatronics in the same year at Sydney Uni. So they're all friends.
Yeah.
And that's made a very big difference for us. And you'd mentioned earlier, Dexter, that when we get most of our people at work every day. Of our 60, we probably have 50 or more in the office every single day. We have an in-office, an in-person culture, and we think that's incredibly important. But it's been facilitated in part because our engineering team are all friends. Yeah. And so there's a sort of a social element to being in the office as much as a work element. They work late. They did not have to build that culture ourselves. It was sort of pre-existing and pre-baked. And so we're really fortunate in that sense that very talented engineers, they were attracted to the scale of the ambition of the company's ambition. They want to build a global software company out of Australia, and so that was what motivated them to reassemble together with us, and it's what allows them. They work incredibly hard. We're here to build a global company. We really want to show. We sort of have that ambition to show the world that you can build big, sophisticated software companies out of Australia. Our view is that that requires an enormous amount of hard work and dedication. Requires that we keep standards very high in the company. We expect excellence from everyone who comes and works here. We're not a place to kick back and relax. That's not the right place for a lot of people. But for those who want that. We think it's a terrific place to work. I think a lot of management is very counterintuitive. It's not something that at least in my case, it's having difficult conversations with people is not something that you are that you're naturally drawn to. Yeah. And yet it's the essence of running a really high performance culture. We've something that I think Dianne and I were initially skeptical on was when our engineering team joined us. They really pushed very hard for full transparency within the company, and we were attracted to it, but somewhat skeptical about how it might work. But we've gone down that path and it's been tremendously successful for us. Yeah. So there is nothing in our company that is not available to anyone. We publish everyone's pay on Confluence. You can see you can see their base salary, the bonus payment that they receive, you can see their ESOP. All of our compensation, Di's and mine, is available. They can see our cap table, they can see how much of the company they own, they can see any of our legal documents, all of our board papers, all of our financial models, everything. There's not a single thing in the company which is not on Confluence or SharePoint that is available for anyone in the company to see. And that actually creates an environment of trust inside the company. It does often. The paradoxical element or the counterintuitive element to it is that it forces you to have really honest conversations with people that are healthy. Yeah. And so someone can come to you and say, "Oh, I think I'm doing a better job than person B, and I should be paid the same as person B." And you're forced to say, "No, I don't. That's not how I see it." Yeah. And so these are the reasons why. And so that's a difficult conversation to have, and one that in the moment you often prefer not to have. And it would be tempting just to, I think in past lives in large organizations you might just say, "Oh, you can, you're being compensated fairly." Yeah. And but I think it really forces you to have honest, frank, transparent conversations, to provide feedback about how people are performing, and actually it creates a much better environment. We'd encourage them to get in touch with us. We have a landing page online that people can find by Googling Constantinople, and we have there's a Join Us tab where they could fill out a form and we can get back in touch with people. I'd say that we're always looking for really high talent. We run a pretty rigorous process around hiring. We have quite a few tests that we put people through, together with interviews. And then the only other thing I'd say, not to discourage people from contacting us, but it's a pretty unique culture that we run inside the company. It's a really high performance.
As I said, we've got amazing talent, right? And I think a lot of the things that you're talking about will resonate.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I you'd said before, Dexter, no ping pong tables or beanbags in the office. Someone actually got off on a floor below us in this building, and then came up. And when they came out and they just saw, sort of 70 desks with monitors, the response was, "Oh my God, this is so hardcore. This is so hardcore up here." With all of those caveats, which are important for us, for the people that you've just spoken about, the type of person who's super ambitious, who wants to work hard on a really big global problem, who shares the ambition of wanting to create big companies that are based in Australia, we are incredibly eager to hear from them.
Yeah.
Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.